She said she would wait for me. She said she loved me. She said she would visit me every week while I was serving my sentence. And for a while, she did. But then the visits changed. There was less warmth, more perfume, shorter hugs, colder stares. I had 2 years left, and I could already feel my life crumbling behind bars. But she didn't know that I wasn't just serving time. I was making plans. She betrayed me, living in my house with another man. So I did what any hurt man with nothing but time would do. I laid the groundwork. And when I got out of prison, I didn't come home with flowers. I came home with proof, a prenuptial agreement, and a damn good plan to make her regret every second. But let me start at the beginning and tell you how I got there. 3 years in prison. That was the sentence. Just like that, everything I had built for over a decade came crashing down with the clang of a courtroom gavel. One moment, I was the boss of my own company, custom renovations and high-end cabinetry, and the next, I was inmate number 47162 in a cold concrete cell 2 states away from the life I used to know. Now, let me be clear about something. I didn't rob a bank. I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't sell anything illegal. My mistake was trusting the wrong people with the wrong numbers. Specifically, an accountant who played a little too loose with the IRS. I signed papers I didn't read as closely as I should have. I trusted him, and he buried a few zeros in the wrong place. When it all came to light, he flipped, blamed me. The court didn't care that I'd employed over 20 people, that I'd sponsored local teams, or that my wife Clara hadn't worked a day in her life because I always made sure she didn't have to. They saw a number on a spreadsheet and threw 3 years of my life away. When I left, my house, our house, was in perfect order. Clara stood in the driveway with tears in her eyes, holding my hand until the officers gave the signal. She said all the right things. She said she'd wait. Said she'd visit every week. Said this wouldn't break us. She was still beautiful, even that day. Still wore the perfume I always bought her for our anniversaries. Blue dress. Red nails. Teardrops catching the sun. I wanted to believe her so bad. I really did. We'd been married for 7 years. No kids. Clara said she wasn't ready, and I respected that. Maybe too much. She liked brunches with her friends, online shopping, yoga classes she rarely actually went to. That was her world. Mine was sawdust, invoices, pickup trucks, and knowing I was building something real. Something that mattered. And every day, I came home to her. I thought that counted for something. When I got to prison, the first few weeks were a blur. Lot of rules, lot of noise, lot of time spent staring at ceilings and wondering how the hell I ended up there. But even in that god-awful place, I clung to what little good I had left, my business, which my assistant Brandon tried to keep afloat, and Clara. She came to visit, just like she promised. First week, then the next. She wore those same blue dresses. Sometimes she brought a photo album or letters from people back home. She'd smile, tell me how boring everything was without me, how she was still figuring out how to work the coffee maker I bought her before I left. And I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I gave her full access to our accounts. Left her the keys to both our cars, mine and the little Audi I got her for her birthday. She stayed in our house. My house. Paid for with long days on my knees in sawdust and late nights with a calculator and a bottle of aspirin. Everything I had went into that place, and I gave it all to her without a second thought. Looking back now, maybe that was the mistake. At the time, I told myself it was the right thing to do. She didn't have a job. Never had. I didn't mind. I made enough for both of us. I liked being the provider. It gave me purpose. And I figured if I was going to be gone for a while, the least I could do was make her life as normal as possible. Besides, it's not like I had anything else to do in there besides think. And think I did. About Clara. About the house. About how things were going to look when I got back. First month? Everything seemed fine. Second month, okay. Third month. I don't know. Maybe it was the way her letters got shorter. Or the way she stopped bringing up little things, what she was cooking, what show she was watching. Sometimes she wouldn't come at all. Said she was feeling under the weather, or had to help a friend. I bought it. She was still smiling, still saying the words. But something about her eyes had changed. She looked past me when we talked. Her hands fidgeted. Her voice was different, like I was a burden she was trying to carry for a few more feet before setting me down for good. And I started to wonder. But I told myself not to jump to conclusions. The mind plays tricks in prison. You get lonely. You overthink. You second-guess. I figured maybe I was just being paranoid. She was still showing up, wasn't she? Still writing me those little notes with "Love, Clara," at the end. But something had shifted. I could feel it in my gut. You spend your whole life working for something, then watch it all slip away through metal bars, and you start to notice the smallest things. A missed phone call, a new necklace, a nervous laugh that wasn't there before. I wanted to believe she was just struggling, that this was hard on her too, that the cracks I saw weren't real, that love could hold through walls and wire fences. But I was wrong, and it would take me another few weeks to understand just how wrong I really was. I think when something breaks between two people, it doesn't always shatter all at once. Sometimes it cracks quietly, like a pane of glass under slow pressure. That's how it started with Clara. She used to lean in close when she talked, put her hand on mine across the glass, ask about my day even if she knew it never changed. But that faded, bit by bit. She sat straighter, leaned back. She stopped asking questions, started looking at her watch more, or her nails. Then there was the way she started dressing. Don't get me wrong, I always liked when Clara dressed up. She had a way of making anything look good. But the way she dressed for prison started to feel off. She never used to wear perfume to visit. Said the place always smelled like bleach and metal and didn't want to mix with it. But then she started showing up smelling like a Macy's counter. Full makeup, like she was putting on a show. And it wasn't just how she looked. It was how she touched me, or didn't. The kisses got lighter. No more lingering hugs, just a stiff peck on the cheek like I was her old uncle. That's when it really hit me. One week she didn't show at all. She sent a letter 2 days later saying her car battery had died and she'd had to wait for a tow. No big deal, right? Except Brandon had just put in a brand new battery for her before winter started. I didn't say anything. Just read the letter 3 times, front and back, looking for some sign it was true. Another time, she said she missed her visit because she had a migraine. That could have been true too. I don't know. But it always seemed to happen on Fridays, the same day she used to come see me, like clockwork. I spent a lot of nights lying in that narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling, trying to reason with myself. You're just being paranoid, I think. It's not like you can do anything about it from in here. And that was the truth. I felt powerless. Worse than locked up, I felt forgotten. But I kept watching, kept listening. Even in a place like that, you've got time to notice things most folks don't. Her tone when she said goodbye. The way her hands shook a little when I mentioned the bills. The pause before she answered when I asked if she was okay. It was the 4th month when my gut stopped whispering and started yelling. That visit, she had her nails done, bright red. I'd seen that shade before. It was the same one she wore when we went to Cabo for our 5th anniversary. The only time she ever wore red like that was when she wanted attention. From someone. That night, I asked Brandon for a favor. Brandon was the only one I still trusted out there. Young guy, good head on his shoulders, ran the front office for my company while I was away. I had him on my approved call list, and I rang him the next morning. Hey, I said, trying to sound calm. I need you to find me someone. A private investigator. There was a pause. What kind of someone? Someone discreet. Someone who doesn't ask a lot of questions. Someone who can follow Clara without getting noticed. I could tell he was surprised, maybe even uncomfortable, but he didn't ask why. Just said, okay, boss. I'll make a few calls. I didn't tell him the full truth. That I'd been lying awake at night thinking about Clara's perfume. That I'd replayed every one of her visits like a security tape in my head, looking for clues. That I didn't want to be right, but I sure as hell wasn't going to be played for a fool while rotting in a concrete box. At that point, I had left on my sentence. About 2 years left. I knew I couldn't undo what had already been broken. But if what I feared was true, I still had time. Time to watch. Time to prepare. Time to make sure that if Clara had started writing a new chapter of her life without me, then I was going to write the ending. Brandon came through like he always did. 2 days after I asked, he called the prison A. I got it at mail call. It was short. Just said, got a guy. Name's Frank. Ex-cop. Real quiet. You'll like him. I had to wait until Sunday to call. That's when the phones were quieter, and most guys were too busy with yard time or the TV room. I stood in the corner with the phone against my ear, one eye watching the clock, the other watching my back. Frank's voice was slow and raspy. Yeah. Heard you need some eyes on someone. I need someone followed, I said. Her name's Clara. My wife. All right, he said. Standard surveillance? No. I need everything. Photos, videos, where she goes, who she's with. Don't miss a step. He asked for her plate number, make and model of the car, address, and schedule. I gave it all to him. Years of living with Clara made her patterns easy to remember. She wasn't a spontaneous person. She liked her routines, morning yoga, afternoon errands, occasional dinners out with her so-called girlfriends. Frank said he'd get started that week. I didn't sleep much the next few nights. You'd think prison would make you numb, but some kinds of waiting cut deeper than bars ever could. 5 days later, Brandon called again. The tone in his voice told me everything before he even said the words. You're gonna want to sit down. I didn't. I stood right there next to the payphone, heart pounding, staring at the gray paint peeling off the wall like it could give me answers. She's not exactly laying low, he said. What did he find? Plenty. Frank dropped everything on a secure drive. Brandon printed it all out and mailed me a thick envelope marked legal docs. I got it 3 days later. Hands shaking, I waited until lights out when the block was quiet. I tore the top open and slid out a manila folder that felt heavier than it should have. The first thing I saw was a photo of Clara at a cafe. Not with her friends. With a guy I didn't recognize. Average build. Baseball cap. Looked like he owned maybe 2 decent shirts. He was leaning in across the table, grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Her hand was on his. Next one. Her leaving Target with him pushing the cart like it was date night. Then one of them getting into my car, my BMW. The same one I kept waxed every Saturday morning for years, the one I drove her to every anniversary dinner in. Now it was his ride to wherever she took him. Then the hotel pictures. The same place we used to go every spring when I wanted to spoil her for a weekend. Different room, maybe. Same sign on the building. Same damn flower pots out front. Different man. They weren't hiding. They walked in together. Walked out together. Different times, different clothes. Frank dated the photos. 3 nights, back to back. Always the same routine. Her car pulled up. He got out first. She followed. The cameras caught them walking down the side alley where the entrance was. No shame, no nerves. Like they were regulars. There were also shots from a park. Not just walking, but holding hands. Him pointing at the ducks. Her laughing at something he said. One of them sitting on a bench with her leaning into his side, head on his shoulder. Another where they kissed under a tree like they were in a made-for-TV movie. I stared at that one the longest. You know how sometimes the world feels too quiet? That's how it was when I finished going through the file. Like even the other guys around me knew to keep their distance. Like everything inside me had gone still, and all I could hear was the buzz of the fluorescent light above my bunk. I just sat there, holding those photos. My stomach twisted so hard I thought I was going to throw up. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was real. Concrete. Paper proof. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I just stared. And then I stared some more. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It wasn't the fact that she lied or that she brought a stranger into the life I built. It was how happy she looked. Happier than I'd seen her in years. Like she wasn't just cheating on me, she was erasing me. But I didn't call her. I didn't write. I didn't even let Brandon know how I felt. I just folded those photos back into the envelope, sealed it up, and put it under my mattress. Not because I was done. Because I was just getting started. The morning after I finished going through the photos, I didn't eat breakfast. I skipped chow entirely. Just sat there in my bunk, staring at the wall like I could carve a hole through it with my eyes. Something in me had hardened. The ache in my chest was gone. It had burned off during the night, replaced by something colder. Something clearer. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to plan. I called Brandon that afternoon. The guards were used to me making Sunday calls, so nobody paid it much attention. I gave my inmate number and waited for the beep. When his voice came through, it was calm, steady, the way I needed it to be. I didn't waste time. Brandon, I said, I want you to empty the joint accounts. Every single one. There was a pause. All of them. Yes. Every last penny Clara can touch. Move it to the business account. Or a separate one under your name. I trust you. Just make sure she can't see a dime of it. You got it, he said. No hesitation. That's why I kept him on. That kid knew when to ask questions and when to follow instructions. This wasn't the time for questions. I sat back against the wall and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was the first real move I'd made since everything started falling apart. She could play in the dark all she wanted, but I still held the light switch. In the fuse box. Brandon took care of it by Wednesday. Sent confirmation through the mail just like before, disguised as standard bookkeeping. Inside were balance sheets, account closings, withdrawal records. It was all cleaned out. Every checking, savings, and shared credit line. Locked and swept clean. Friday morning, I got the call. They paged me over the speaker while I was mopping the corridor. Said I had a collect call from Clara. I dried my hands and picked up the receiver. Damon, she said, her voice tight with panic. Something's wrong. I tried to pay the mortgage and it bounced. The checking account's empty. I let a few seconds pass. Must be the investigation, I said calmly. Government probably froze the accounts. What? What investigation? You didn't tell me anything. It's federal, I replied. They're reviewing everything. Asset holds, security measures. Standard procedure. She was breathing fast on the other end. But what am I supposed to do? That's the only money I have. I need to pay the electric bill. The HOA sent another fine last week for the bushes not being trimmed. I didn't laugh, though part of me wanted to. I'll get it sorted, I told her. In the meantime, you might want to take out a small loan. Just something to hold you over until the freeze is lifted. You should qualify easily. There was silence. Then, you want me to take out a loan? Just short term, I said. I'll pay it back when I get out. I'm still good for it, Clara. She was quiet for a long time. I could hear her breathing, flipping through thoughts, weighing what little knowledge she had against the story I just handed her. She wasn't good with numbers. Never was. The finances had always been my department. I guess, she finally said. I mean, I don't really have another option. I'll walk you through it if you need help, I offered. Keep the payments low. Use what you need. It's just until I'm home. We hung up not long after. I sat there holding the receiver, staring through the scratched plastic of the phone booth, and I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. She applied for the loan a few days later. Brandon told me everything. It was a large one, more than she probably needed. Of course it was. Clara never did anything small. If she was going to live in my house and see some other guy, she was going to do it in style. And now she could. At least, for a little while. She tapped into the funds quickly. I knew her patterns. Spa visits, boutique clothes, fancy little brunches that cost more than they were worth. What she didn't know was that every swipe of that card was just more rope for the noose she didn't see tightening. It didn't take long for the loan payments to start. And I knew Clara. She could live in a fantasy, sure, but she hated responsibility. She'd never worked a full-time job, never had to balance anything on her own. She always had me. Until now. And the best part? She thought I was the one who would come back and fix it all. That I'd walk out of those prison gates, smile, hug her, and take on the debt like a loyal husband should. But I had other plans. Once the money was out of her hands and the loan sat nice and heavy in her lap, I moved on to the next step. It wasn't enough to know. I needed proof, real, undeniable, time-stamped proof. The kind that couldn't be explained away or covered up with some sad little speech about mistakes or loneliness. I didn't want revenge in a fit of rage. I wanted it precise, measured, documented. So I called Brandon again. I told him I needed a contractor, not a real one, just someone who could look the part. We came up with a plan: plumbing inspection. Nothing unusual about a guy in uniform coming in with a toolbox and a clipboard. Clara didn't know the first thing about maintenance. She once called me in a panic because the garbage disposal made a humming sound, so she wouldn't question it. The guy we sent in was a tech friend of Brandon's, someone he trusted. I never met him, but I didn't need to. He knew what he was doing. Came in on a weekday afternoon while Clara was out at Pilates or wherever the hell she was going those days. The guy installed 3 small cameras, one in the living room, one in the hallway, and one discreetly behind a vent in the bedroom. Battery-powered. Motion-activated. Wi-Fi enabled to a secure drive. No blinking lights, no sound. Just quiet eyes in the walls. And then we waited. The first few days, it was quiet. Clara walking around the house in a robe. On the phone. Sometimes watching TV, sometimes dancing by herself in the kitchen with a glass of wine. You could almost believe she was just a bored housewife trying to fill the time. But the first man showed up the next weekend. He didn't knock. He just walked in. Used a key. That told me everything I needed to know. They sat on the couch. Talked for a while. Then she grabbed his hand and led him toward the hallway. The camera in the bedroom caught the rest. I fast-forwarded through most of it. I didn't need to see every detail. Just enough to know who he was. His face was clear. His voice, too. Tall, dark hair, cocky walk, like he owned the place. He left early in the morning. She watched him go from the porch, wearing my old hoodie like it was hers now. 2 days later, a different man showed up. Blonde this time. Younger. Drove a beat-up red pickup with rust on the wheel wells. They ordered food, watched a movie in the living room. He stayed late. Left his shoes by the door. Clara laughed the entire time like she hadn't a care in the world. This pattern kept up over the next few weeks. It wasn't every night. Sometimes she was alone. Sometimes she had friends over. But twice a week, like clockwork, one of those two showed up. And she welcomed them like they were regulars at a diner she managed. I cataloged everything. Timestamps. License plates. The way she changed the bedsheets after one left and before the other arrived. I saw her go through drawers I built with my own hands, wearing that lazy smile like nothing about what she was doing felt wrong. And through it all, the letters kept coming. Every week like clockwork. Same tone. Same words. Miss you so much. Can't wait to have our life back. I'm still yours. She signed every single one. With love, your Clara. I'd read them in the same bunk I'd sit in at night watching the footage Brandon sent. I kept the letters folded neatly under my pillow, like they were sacred. Like they still meant something. They didn't. They were fiction. A fairy tale version of her, sent to keep me calm, to buy herself time and peace while she lived off my name, my roof, my car, and my money. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the ease of it. She didn't even hide. No guilt. No hesitation. Like I was a memory she'd already buried. Just another picture in a frame she'd turned face down on a shelf. But I wasn't buried. I was watching. Recording. Stacking each clip, each photo, each letter, laying the bricks of something she'd never see coming. The day I got released, the sky was gray and thick with humidity. I stepped out of those gates with nothing but a duffel bag, a pair of stiff jeans that didn't fit right anymore, and a folder full of papers that said I'd paid my debt to society. But I didn't go home. I didn't even tell Clara I was getting out that week. She thought I had another 30 days left, based on the lie I fed her during our last phone call. I told her the state was slow with processing. She believed it. Of course she did. She never questioned a single thing unless it involved shoe sizes or wine pairings. Instead of going back to the house I built, the house she had turned into a revolving door for strangers, I got in Brandon's truck and rode straight to my lawyer's office. His name was Calvin Marks. Older guy. Smart. No nonsense. He'd helped me draft the prenup before Clara and I got married. At the time, she called it insulting. Said I didn't trust her. Truth was, I'd just seen too many men lose everything because they were too in love to protect what they built. I told her it was just a precaution. She agreed eventually, after some tears and a few dramatic silences. That prenup saved my life. All the evidence had been sorted and cataloged. Photos, videos, timestamps, receipts, letters, even the audio from the cameras. Calvin said we wouldn't even need to drag it all out in court. Just enough to make the message clear. The prenup had one key clause. If either party was caught in an extramarital relationship, the other would retain everything acquired during the marriage, no contest. It also specified that any gifts, assets, or shared property would revert to the faithful spouse. That meant the house, the cars, the furniture, the savings, all of it. A few days later my release, Calvin sent the paperwork to Clara's address via certified mail. I stayed at Brandon's house for the week, in his spare room over the garage. It smelled like paint thinner and old carpet, but it was quiet, and nobody knew I was there. That's how I wanted it. She found out I was free when she opened the mailbox. By then, it was already done. I got the first call less than 2 hours later. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Clara, why are you doing this? You're home? Clara, please answer me. Clara, is this about the money? We can fix it. Then the voicemails. The first one was calm, confused. Damon, I don't understand what's happening. I thought you weren't getting out for another month. The second one was louder. You blindsided me with this. What's going on? Why didn't you come home? By the third, she was yelling. I swear, if you don't answer, I'm coming to find you. I turned the phone off after that. Left it in the drawer. Brandon handed me a beer without saying anything. We sat on his back porch, watching the sunset, the kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need revenge served in front of her face. I wanted it done right, quiet, surgical. She thought I'd come back and play the part. She thought she could smile, offer a hug, maybe even lie her way through some teary-eyed speech. But I wasn't interested in performances anymore. I had all I needed. The last message she sent before I blocked her was a single line. This isn't fair. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. The thing about fairness is it only matters to the people who get caught. Clara had lived off my name, my work, and my silence for over a year. She had the comfort of my home, the keys to my car, the title of wife, while making a mockery of everything that word should have meant. She thought I'd crawl back. Instead, I vanished. I ghosted her in every sense of the word. No warnings. No goodbyes. Just a cold envelope with her name on it, landing like a brick in her mailbox. And I didn't look back. The time of judgment has come. The courthouse smelled like dust and coffee. The kind of place where you could tell people didn't want to be, but still had to sit and watch their lives change. I wore a clean button-down, nothing flashy. Just sharp and respectful. Calvin, my lawyer, was calm as ever, holding a stack of neatly organized folders like they weighed nothing. We got there early and sat up front. When Clara walked in, you could hear the air get sucked out of the room. She wore a tight black dress, one I'd never seen before. Low neckline, high heels, hair curled like she was going to a charity gala instead of a court hearing. Her makeup was thick, like she was painting over the stress. Her smile was fake, but she was trying to charm the room, the judge, maybe even me. Behind her were her parents, Beverly and Wayne. They didn't look at me when they passed my row, but I saw it, the little twitch in Wayne's jaw, the way Beverly held her purse like a shield. The judge came in, a tall man with glasses who looked like he'd seen every trick in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. He opened the file. He looked at Clara. He looked at me. Then he nodded to Calvin. My lawyer didn't waste time. He stood up and began calmly laying out the case. Photos first, then video stills, then full-length clips projected on a small screen that faced the bench. The footage was sharp, time-stamped, color-corrected. Clara with the tall man at the park. Clara leading the blonde guy into the house. Clara serving dinner on the patio, laughing, hugging, all while still sending me letters with "Love, your Clara" at the bottom. I didn't look at her while it played, but I heard her. Her breathing got heavier. She shifted in her chair. At one point she whispered something to her lawyer, but he just shook his head. Then came the bank records. Brandon had pulled together a full timeline. Withdrawals from the loan account. Charges from restaurants, hotels, boutiques, spa visits. None of it was subtle. None of it was small. The courtroom stayed quiet. The kind of quiet that buzzes in your ears. I glanced over once, just to see her face. Her father was red in the cheeks, staring down at the floor. Her mother stood up and walked out, heels clicking like a metronome of shame. Clara was frozen, staring at the screen like she didn't recognize the woman in the footage, like she could will it into disappearing. But it didn't. The judge waited until everything had been shown. Then he looked over the prenup, signed, notarized, clear as day. The clause was highlighted. Any infidelity transfers marital assets to the non-offending spouse. No contest. No loopholes. Calvin made sure of that. Clara's lawyer stood and tried to argue emotional stress. Said something about the isolation of prison, about how hard it had been on her. He mentioned love, commitment, confusion. It didn't land. The judge leaned forward and said, "The evidence speaks for itself." Then it happened. Clara stood up so fast her chair tipped backward and hit the floor with a bang. She didn't even notice. She turned to me, arms out like we were on some stage in a high school play. "Damon, please," she said, loud enough that people in the hallway could probably hear. "I made a mistake. I thought I lost you. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't say a word." She took a step forward, then dropped to her knees. In her heels and tight dress, it looked awkward. Desperate. Her voice cracked. "I was wrong. I'm sorry. Don't take everything away from me. Please." The bailiff stepped in. The judge looked annoyed, but he let her finish. I didn't move. The court ruled in my favor. Just like we expected. Everything acquired during the marriage was mine. The cars. The furniture. Her loan? That was hers to deal with. I'd never signed for it. Never co-signed. I just told her to take it out. And she did. All in her name. When it was over, I stood up slowly. My legs were steady. Clara tried to follow, but the bailiff held her back. I didn't look back at her again. Not because I was angry. Because I was done. She screamed my name once more as I walked out of that courtroom. But all I heard was the echo of my boots on the tile. 2 years can feel like a lifetime, or it can go by in a blink. For me, it was both. After the divorce was finalized, I took a deep breath for the first time in years and started from scratch. I didn't keep the old house. I didn't want it. Every corner held a memory, and not the kind worth hanging on to. I sold it within a month and closed that chapter without even walking through it one last time. I stayed with Brandon for a little while longer. Quiet projects, simple routines. Then I found a rental on the other side of town, nothing fancy, just enough space and sunlight. I kept to myself. Got back into woodworking. Went for long drives with no destination. Some days I just sat in the shop, working on a piece of maple until my hands remembered who I was. 6 months later, I bought a place of my own. Smaller than the one Clara had filled with throw pillows and scented candles, but it felt right. One level. Good bones. A backyard with a solid oak tree and a little patio where I could sip my coffee in the mornings and listen to birds instead of lies. Somewhere in that quiet, I met someone new. Her name's Emily. She teaches at a community college, English literature. She's sharp, funny in a dry way, and doesn't care one bit about brand names or social status. She listens more than she talks, and when she talks, she means every word. She doesn't need saving. She doesn't expect me to fix her world. She just lets me be in it. We took it slow. No rush. No pretending. She knew about my past early on. I told her one evening over takeout. I expected her to pull away. Instead, she just nodded, asked a couple questions, then said, "Sounds like you got through hell and kept your boots on. We don't talk about Clara. There's no need. That part of my life sits in a drawer, closed and quiet." Then, one Saturday afternoon, Emily and I were walking through the mall after grabbing lunch. She wanted to stop by a bookstore, and I was just tagging along, holding her hand, feeling like a normal man for the first time in a long while. As we passed the entrance to the grocery store, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. At first, I didn't register it. Then I did. Clara. She was standing near the frozen section, pushing a cart with one wobbly wheel. Her hair was messy, like she hadn't bothered with a brush that morning. The jeans were faded and too loose. Her shirt looked wrinkled, maybe worn more than once. The cart was mostly full of frozen dinners, instant noodles, and store-brand soda. I stopped walking. Not on purpose, just instinct. She saw me. Her eyes locked on mine. For a second, she didn't move. Then she let go of the cart, took 2 steps toward me, and dropped to her knees. Right there, in the middle of the tiled walkway, in front of the freezer doors and a rack of discount cookies. "Please, Damon," she said. Her voice cracked. I was stupid. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't think you'd really leave me like that. Emily stood beside me, quiet. She didn't ask. She didn't tug my hand. She just waited. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She wasn't wearing makeup this time. No performance, no pretending. Just desperation. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "I beg you," she said. "I don't have anything left." I didn't say a word. I stepped forward. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough for her to know I was passing by. She reached toward my ankle, but I moved past her like she wasn't there. She stayed on the floor. People started to stare. A few workers glanced over from behind the checkout lanes. I kept walking. Emily followed without a sound, our steps echoing down the polished floor. I didn't turn around. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. That moment wasn't about revenge or pride. It was about peace. About knowing I didn't have to carry her anymore, not in my home, not in my thoughts, not in the weight I used to feel in my chest. She made her choices, and I made mine. We left the mall with a bag of books and a quiet kind of joy. I never saw Clara again. Share your thoughts in the comments. What's the coldest but smartest revenge you've ever seen or done? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.